Egypt and Turkey FMs discuss Gaza, stressing UN resolution implementation and strengthening the stabilization force. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdel stresses the importance of maintaining the Gaza ceasefire. And millions of Egyptians will vote Monday and Tuesday in the second phase of the parliamentary elections. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdel and Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan have exchanged views on Gaza, emphasizing the UN resolution's implementation and empowering the stabilization force. Their meeting came on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Johannesburg, where Abdel highlighted Egypt's efforts to enforce the Sharm el-Sheikh peace agreement and support Gaza's reconstruction. They also discussed implementing the outcomes of the recent Joint Planning Group meeting in Ankara and preparations for Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's 2026 visit to Cairo to chair the second high-level Strategic Cooperation Council meeting. They also addressed other regional issues of mutual interest. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdel called for Canada's participation in the Early Recovery and Reconstruction Conference following the recognition of the Palestinian state. This comes during his meeting with his Canadian counterpart, Anita Anand, at the G20 summit in Johannesburg. They discussed regional issues including Gaza and Egypt's ongoing efforts to implement the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement. They also discussed strengthening bilateral relations, boosting trade, and encouraging Canadian investment in Egypt, especially in energy, agriculture, and water sectors. Abdel highlighted Egypt's business-friendly reforms and built on recent political consultations, including the April visit of Egyptian business delegations to Ottawa. Foreign Minister Badr Abdel reaffirmed Egypt's firm support for Lebanon's sovereignty and stability. This comes during his meeting with the French counterpart, Jean-Noël Barrot, on the sidelines of the G20 summit. The two foreign ministers also discussed Sudan, with Egypt underscoring rejection of any division and urging a full ceasefire. Abdel praised France's stance on Palestine, stressing the need to implement the latest Security Council resolution on Gaza and enable international stabilization forces. Both highlighted the importance of de-escalation on Iran's nuclear file and noted that the growing momentum in Egypt-France strategic relations as they reviewed the regional developments. Foreign Minister Badr Abdel discussed regional issues including Gaza, Lebanon, and Yemen with Singapore's Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan during the G20 summit in South Africa. They reviewed the positive momentum in bilateral relations following the Singaporean President's September 2025 visit and explored ways of enhancing cooperation ahead of the 60th diplomatic anniversary. Discussions included implementing agreements, boosting Singaporean investments in priority industries like renewable energy and biotechnology, strengthening ties with ASEAN. Abdel emphasized Egypt's role in stabilizing Gaza, supporting Lebanese sovereignty, and backing Yemen's legitimate government to ensure regional security. Still on Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati, he encouraged Indian companies to increase their investments in Egypt, highlighting the competitive advantages and incentives offered by the Suez Canal Economic Zone. This comes during his meeting with the Indian Foreign Minister on the sidelines of the G20 summit in South Africa. Abdulati congratulated India on its upcoming 2026 BRICS presidency, expressing Egypt's full support and interest in strengthening economic and financial cooperation for member states' benefits. The two counterparts discussed boosting collaboration in trade, investment, technology, and innovation. Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati and his Saudi counterpart Faisal bin Farhan discussed Sudan's stability, affirming support for Sudan's national state institutions. This comes during their meeting on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Johannesburg, where they discussed Lebanon's security and the outcomes of the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's U.S. visit. The two counterparts reaffirmed strategic ties and Arab regional coordination. Their discussions also focused on strengthening bilateral relations, advancing the Egyptian-Saudi Strategic Coordination Council, and deepening cooperation across political, economic, and regional issues. Both ministers emphasized the importance of implementing the UN resolution on Gaza, advancing the Trump peace plan, supporting the ceasefire, and preparing for the International Reconstruction Conference. Hamas stated that its delegation met Egypt's General Intelligence Services head in Cairo to discuss developments on the Gaza ceasefire and the second phase of the agreement. The delegation reaffirmed its commitment to implementing the first phase of the ceasefire, stressing the importance of halting Israeli violations that could undermine the deal. Hamas emphasized establishing a clear mechanism to report breaches to mediators for immediate action, preventing unilateral steps that escalate the tensions. The delegation praises Egypt's continued mediation efforts since the war's end. Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati emphasized the importance of upholding the Gaza ceasefire. This comes during his call with the Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, where they focused on Gaza and discussed fully implementing the Sharm el-Sheikh peace agreement, delivering humanitarian aid and enabling international stabilization forces. The two ministers also discussed Sudan, stressing unity, sovereignty, and stability, as well as Lebanon, highlighting the need to maintain security, prevent escalations, and safeguard the country's territorial integrity in coordination with regional powers. The talks also covered bilateral relations. Moving back home, where the Egyptian Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation condemned the unilateral erratic operations of Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam on the Blue Nile. In a statement, the ministry said that since the so-called inauguration, Ethiopia released fluctuating water volumes ranging from 485 million to 780 million cubic meters, causing sudden rises and drops that far exceed natural flood levels. The Egyptian Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation stressed that the dam is operated without proper hydrological planning, using emergency spillways irregularly, threatening downstream safety and other dams. This comes as Egypt is closely monitoring the situation, implementing scientific water management via satellite and modeling, and ensuring the high dam remains the main safeguard to maintain water stability, protect national interests, and secure public water needs. Egypt dispatched the 78th aid convoy under the Zaid al-Izza Provision of Honor from Egypt to Gaza initiative from Rafah to Gaza via the Kerem Abu Sadim border crossing. The convoy delivers urgent humanitarian aid to Gaza, as it includes essential winter supplies, which are 17,000 blankets, 104,000 winter clothing items, 144 mattresses and 8,900 tents. That comes alongside over 220,000 food baskets, 2,800 tons of flour, and more than 3,000 tons of medical and relief supplies, as well as 1,200 tons of fuel. Since July 27th, the Egyptian initiative transported thousands of tons of aid, coordinated by 35,000 volunteers at the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing, supporting Gaza continuously with food, medical aid, fuel, and other necessities. The Egyptian Relief Committee in Gaza continued providing essential support to hospitals and families across Gaza. It delivers supplies for children and patients, including baby formula, diapers, and adult hygiene items. This comes as volunteers have also set up educational camps in Deir el-Balah to ensure children learning continues despite hardships. Previously, the Egyptian Committee established 15 camps and distributed aid throughout Gaza, overcoming Israeli restrictions. Egyptian emergency teams responded swiftly to severe weather, delivering tents, food, and other relief items to affected areas, demonstrating the continued hands-on humanitarian support from Egypt since the start of the war on Gaza. The Egyptian Committee in the Gaza Strip has intensified its field efforts following the recent heavy rainfall that struck the region. Its technical teams have been widely deployed across the most affected areas to provide urgent assistance to local residents.
In an immediate response to support displacement camps as winter approaches for Gaza's residents, the Egyptian Committee for Gaza Relief, in coordination with official and international bodies, is leading extensive humanitarian and relief efforts across the Gaza Strip. These efforts include sending hundreds of thousands of tons of aid and constructing shelters for displaced families. The Egyptian Committee has intensified its field operations in Gaza to distribute tents and temporary shelters, providing urgent assistance to families affected by heavy rains and severe weather, including those in Gaza City and the northern areas. The Egyptian Committee in the Gaza Strip is constructing camps to accommodate Palestinian displaced persons, with the number of camps now reaching 10. This includes the recently inaugurated largest displacement camp, established to withstand harsh weather conditions and the onset of winter. Hundreds of thousands of families have already been housed in these camps. The Egyptian Committee's operations have been swift, with technical teams deployed widely across the most affected areas to deliver immediate support to residents. Assistance measures include preparing alternative temporary accommodations and providing logistical support to ensure the protection of families from adverse weather conditions. The Egyptian Committee of the needs in the hardest hit areas. These efforts reflect Egypt's humanitarian role in alleviating the impact of harsh weather conditions in Gaza and mitigating the suffering of its residents amid the ongoing aggression against the Gaza Strip.
Millions of Egyptians are set to vote on Monday and Tuesday in the second phase of the House of Representatives elections, covering 13 key governments, including Cairo, the Dakhliya, and Port Said. Ahmed bin Dari, the head of the National Election Authority, said that 34.6 million registered voters will choose from 1,316 candidates competing for 142 seats. Hundreds of schools will close temporarily to serve as polling stations during the two-day vote. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin from Egypt. But before we wrap up, here's a recap of the top stories making headlines for this hour. Egypt and Turkey's FMs discuss Gaza, stressing UN resolution implementation and strengthening the stabilization force. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdel stresses the importance of maintaining the Gaza ceasefire. Millions of Egyptians will vote Monday and Tuesday in the second phase of the parliamentary elections. For more stories and live updates, follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok using the handle @QNewsEGY to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more.